Spying, drone reconnaissance sent home in disgrace.
An Olympic spying scandal.
Canada's been caught spying on our women's football team at the Olympics.
Canada were caught flying a drone over the Football Ferns training session.
Shocked, disappointed, but then I throw a few other emotions in there too. Frustrated.
It's the spying scandal that's rocked the Olympics.
Well, the Canadian women's football team has sent home 2 of its staff from the Olympics in Paris.
A coaching analyst and an assistant have been sent home, receiving a suspended sentence, one of them, from French authorities.
Although it would seem a little bit bizarre that they would do it so obviously, I guess Canada are feeling the same way. They've been caught off guard. The Canadian Olympic Committee says they're shocked and disappointed. They've apologised unreservedly to the Football Ferns and the New Zealand Olympic Committee.
So, who knew what and when? And do you truly believe the players in the team knew nothing of this?
I don't think so.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies on The Detail today. Is spying the real reason Canada went from pretender to global contender in football, dragging the beautiful game into murky scandal and shame? And just how common is spying in sport? This is RNZ sports journalist Jamie Wall.
All the scandals up until now have involved performance-enhancing drugs. There's just been, unfortunately, too many to remember. But I guess in terms of spying, this is a new one for the Olympics.
The spying story has dominated Olympic coverage. Here's how it started. The Canadian women's team, the defending Olympic champs, were caught spying on New Zealand ahead of their opening game. A drone operated by a Canadian official was flown over the Kiwis' training session. When confronted, Canada went from attack to defence and damage control.
It's sort of turned into how a political scandal would play out. First off, it was, we're just going to blame it on the junior staffer. And then, it turned out so a few other people kind of knew about it. And then it turns out the head coach not only knew about it, but has probably done it before and told these people to do it.
That head coach is Bev Priestman, who was married to a Kiwi and used to live in New Zealand and is a one-time winner of the Women's World Best National Coach Award. She's now been sent home from the Games in disgrace and suspended by FIFA for a year.
First of all, I'd like to apologise. I think on behalf of the leader of this programme, I think on behalf of, I'm ultimately accountable. I think that's why personally, it was really important to me, I think, to take this moment to show strong leadership and to represent the values of this country, of the team and of myself.
So can she recover from this, or is it all over?
I think it'd be pretty long road back for her to recover from this. I'm pretty shocked about it as well, because I actually had a bit of dealing with Bev when she was down here for the Women's World Cup. Just weirdly ran into each other in an airport, and I'd interviewed her the day before at the draw for the main tournament.
What's she like?
She's really nice. She's really nice. Like most people who I meet in this line of work. And we actually had a chat for a good half an hour just about life, not sport or anything like that. And, living in New Zealand and where she lived and her family and things like that. So that's why I'm quite as shocked as I was, because my main touch point with her is just connecting on a human level. And to see this happen, it just feels like, oh man, I don't want to see this happen to you,
Her team did go on to beat New Zealand 2-1 in their opening game.
Evelyn Viens, who tucks it away, the inside of the post, low-driven finish past Anna Leet, and the reigning champions take the lead.
The stupid thing was they probably didn't even need help from a drone above the Kiwi training.
It's actually really strange. I mean, and I don't want to be dismissive of the Football Ferns, and this is going to sound like it, but clearly you don't hire an unaccredited analyst and his drone just to spy on the Football Ferns.
They should now be medal contenders, but the spying scandal has seen them docked 6 points, which essentially ends their competition.
That's probably the biggest blow to them. And there's just been a lot of talk about whether it's fair for the players, because they're saying they didn't have anything to do with it, and that's probably about right. And other ones being punished by this because it's ended their Olympic dreams. And the other thing is that the Canadian women's football team is a strong side. They're a very good team. and they probably would have been hoping to at least make the knockouts and challenge for a medal.
Well, they are the defending champs, and I guess the question begs, they were playing New Zealand. Why on earth would they spy on New Zealand? What were they hoping to achieve or see?
Well, yeah, that was the joke straight away, and I'm glad you brought it up, man, not me. But yeah, obviously the football ferns haven't had the best record in the last, well, forever. Yeah, I mean, the joke was that perhaps the drone pilot got lost and he was trying to fly over the English or the Spanish team's training facility. You know, jokes aside, by doing this, it shows that it's probably happened before, because you wouldn't start off by doing it against a team that you're probably favoured to beat anyway. And I think that just sort of reading between the lines, it was something that people had suspected of the Canadians of doing for a while now. If they can uncover more evidence that it's happened before, it's probably going to be like worse in the long run. I think, though, the one saving grace that she personally has on this is that the cohort of female elite level coaches is pretty small. And given that in a women's program you perhaps would prefer to have an experienced woman in charge, you know, she fits that category. That might play into her favour. But again, it's not like she's going to get hired the day after this ban ends. It's also quite a big one for just the Canadian football just in general, because people are just going to associate them with this, much in the same way that we associate Australian cricket with cheating. And
who can forget the dirty underarm bowling?
Well,
We've
the
never
underarm,
moved on.
the sandpaper, the everything else. So it's when we think about this team, that's what we're going to think about them. So reputationally, it's done some serious damage already.
There are reports that Canadian officials were forced to pilot drones or face losing their jobs, and it allegedly dates back to when the team won gold at Tokyo.
Julia Grosso from Vancouver to win it for Canada!
Clearly it's endemic, and I think that's where we've got to with it, is that this is just part of Canada's dossier. It's just what they do.
So should they be stripped of their medals?
It's not out of the question. Taking away Olympic medals for cheating has clearly happened in the past. This would be a new one. They would have to set a precedent around this. But if they can gather enough evidence that it has happened in the past, I wouldn't put it past the IOC to take some sort of drastic course of action.
And do you truly believe the players in the team knew nothing of this?
I don't think so. I think that something like this would be used in order to give information to players. This is my own opinion. This is not based on any fact. But having been involved in sports teams before and been around coaching staff who are trying to instruct you on the best way to win games, it's pretty hard for me to believe that this sort of stuff wasn't being at least passed on to the players. So yeah, it's a stretch to think that they weren't.
Now, this is obviously the women's team, the men's team. What implication does this have for them, and especially since they're going to be co-hosting the World Cup in a couple of years?
Yeah, I think that it probably would have blown up just as a major issue surrounding Canadian sport. It probably would have blown over by them, and I think the FIFA's machine and able to control the narrative around their own tournament, having been up close and personal with that, is so effective that they'll be able to probably shut down any sort of talk of that sort of thing happening by the time that happens. But like I said, it's going to be a thing among fans. It's going to be a thing among punditry around the women's team going forward. I have been in contact with a couple of the Canadian athletes who I know over there. They're deeply embarrassed by it, and they're not involved with the football team at all. I've made a few jokes at their expense, and you could tell just from the responses that it was like, oh yeah, good one. Like you've earned the right to say this joke, but we're not really that happy about it.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, it's something that it's gonna take a while to live down.
Big question here for you, Jamie. Do New Zealanders cheat or spy?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course they do. There's an old saying in sports that if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And
I like it.
There's been numerous instances of New Zealanders cheating on the field, whether that's simply by claiming catches that have hit the ground in cricket or, foul play in rugby. I mean, if you are to go overseas and talk to any overseas rugby fan about what they think about Richie McCaw, it's that he's the greatest cheat who ever lived. And you always have to retort by saying, it's because he knew where the rule was and he knew when to step over it and when the referee wasn't looking. That makes him a good rugby player, not a bad one.
I can't argue that. Yeah. He just knew where the line was and went right to it.
So I feel like there's a great deal of subterfuge that goes on amongst teams that we probably just don't know about because they're just good at it.
The All Blacks, he says, are well aware of others spying on their training sessions and are prepared.
I remember last year I was at the World Cup with the All Blacks and we were allowed into their training venue one day and they had the usual security around and they had a guy sitting on a table with a little screen in front of him and an assault rifle next to him. And... Ooh. There were armed guards around anyway, just because it's kind of France and that's just kind of the way they roll over there. And I remember asking, I said, what's this for? And he said, this is for drones. I'm here to shoot down anything that flies over the field. Wow. So that's how serious they were taking it. Obviously, the football fans didn't have a guy like that. Yeah. Because otherwise, this whole thing could have been resolved with one shot. The more ridiculous stuff is the lengths that teams actually go to protect themselves from being spied upon. I've covered the All Blacks for almost 10 years now, and the amount of paranoia that goes on around their trainings. And I mean, I kind of get it because they're all trying to understand who's going to get picked, who's playing in what position and what sort of game plan they're going to be running. But for example, a couple of years ago in Melbourne, we were sitting there outside about 200 metres away from where they were, and we couldn't see anything anyway, and we got told to go and move to the next block of streets so we couldn't see them, and they said someone will drive down and pick you up once we're ready for you to actually see what we were doing. One journalist, who will stay unnamed, decided to circumvent that by climbing a tree. On that, I wasn't going to join him. I'd had a big night the night before, so I wasn't really feeling really up to it, so I simply went across the road. But it's just things like that. There was another ridiculous All Black story where their hotel was apparently bugged. Their team room was bugged in 2016. It turned out that it hadn't been bugged and that the security guard who was on duty simply made it up to concoct some sort of story about to almost to justify how much of their security was around the team. And it's a very confusing, odd story because I was trying to read up on it this morning because I'd forgotten exactly what happened. There's a reason why I've forgotten because it's so stupid. It's not worth remembering. So there's just things like that. The All Blacks are pretty famous for how the lengths they'll go to not let you see what they're doing. Again, I kind of get it. There's only so much you should be able to see of a rugby practice without being able to understand how they're running things, because if to the trained eye, you're going to be able to figure stuff out pretty soon. But yeah, it's like I said, they've probably got a guy with a gun right now watching out for drones.
But really, who ever expected the Canadians, America's sweet, lovely, honest cousins, to be guilty of this crime?
It had to be the Canadians, arguably the nicest country in the world. I mean, Canadians just don't upset people. Why is it them? It's so strange.
It shocked me because the Canadians are so bloody nice. They were the most unlikely cheats from the Olympics.
Well, Amanda, I don't know, obviously, maybe you're not as old as I am, but if you do remember, Canada was involved in probably one of the most famous bits of Olympic cheating in all time. 1988,
Ben
Johnson
True.
won the 100 metres
True.
and then failed his drug test the next day. So
doesn't get more
it
scandalous
doesn't,
than that.
you know, that's unfortunately probably Canada's most famous Olympic moment in the Summer Olympics anyway. Winter Olympics, that's a little bit better. But yeah, I understand. You're right. You don't expect a Canadian to do something as devious as this. Every Canadian I've met has been super nice.
Actually, let's not forget it was 2 Canadians who famously slipped into scuba diving gear to spy on Australia's boat in the America's Cup more than 40 years ago.
The Australians caught a member of the Canadian team diving around the underbody of Australia 2 in mid-July.
There's definitely shameless form here. Kiwi producer Larry Keating knows the details inside out.
So early one morning, 1983, the boat was being lowered into the water. And a guard who was wandering around, making sure that nobody was spying on anything, sees these bubbles coming up from underneath the boat and jumps in, clothes and all, finds this cameraman underwater and arrests him. So he was handed over to the police. But because he'd given them the camera and all the film, they didn't prosecute him. But what they didn't know was there was another diver in the water at the same time who had all the pictures that they needed. Fortunately for Bond, none of it was published. So the images that they were looking at was their keel, because under the boat, the Australians had come up with this new wing keel concept. And so nobody knew what was there, and they'd painted it to disguise it. So if there was an image to be shot from the sky through water, part of it was blue and part of it was white, so completely confused the photographer. It looked like an ordinary keel.
How bad and how huge is spying when it comes to the America's Cup?
Well, it has been traditionally huge. Virtually every America's Cup since 1853 has been full of controversy and spying at all levels, up until this America's Cup in 2024, where they've changed the rules. But up until then, there's been wonderful stories about spying and capture and so on that have made it particularly interesting.
Larry Keating should know he's covered 11 America's Cup regattas, written about them, filmed them, documented them. He says in recent years the spying has become increasingly dangerous and expensive. I know Jimmy Spittle said it's almost like James Bond or CIA, the sort of lengths they go to do the spying. Do you agree with that it's that extreme?
Oh, yeah, sure, because it was really serious. I mean, it was against the rules of the game.
Now the rules of the game have changed. For the first time in America's Cup history, the spy versus spy games are over.
I think that they realised that it was just getting too tricky. And the other reason why they've gone down this road is that it was costing so much money, a huge amount of money to set up a spy network to make it work. Because it dates, right back to the point of actually designing the boat. And then, of course, the spying changes as the boat develops and gets into the water, and now what are you looking for? So it was costing them a fortune in boats and fuel and people and manpower, and they were very happy to get rid of it.
Instead of individual reconnaissance teams working for the individual teams, the spies are now all working together to spy on each other.
What they're trying to do here is just make it easy for everybody, including the public, to understand what is going on with the game as it's progressing, as it's getting into the sport. So they've formed this group. It's called the Recon Management Panel. And there are representatives from each of the challenges and the Team New Zealand. And so they basically set up under the auspices and the costs that are covered by the America's Cup Organising Committee to go out there and film everything, and including the interviews, and they're sharing all of that amongst themselves, amongst the challenges and the defender, but they're also putting it up on the cloud. So you can go into the americascup.com website and the public can actually share all of this information.
Information detailed. Are we looking at the boat design? Are we looking at what are we going to be getting from that? And does it take sort of some of the competitiveness out?
No, I think that it's more now after the boats are they're designed, they're in the water, they're racing already, they're out there, practicing and training and so on. I think that of anything, it'll be maybe crew tactics, crew techniques, what they're seeing on the water as to how they tack the boat. I mean, these boats are now flying at 100 kilometres an hour. So handling a boat like this, which is virtually right out of the water, sitting on a foil or two, it's pretty amazing. And so every one of the crew on every one of the boats will all have a particular task that they all want to understand so the opposing teams can share it all. But so can we. We can actually go on board now into the website and you can see what they've been filming, high resolution, what they're saying, sharing all of the information that's being, all the banter that goes on amongst the crews. So basically just sort of taken that part of the spy game right out of the picture.
What do the teams make of this? What's their feedback been on it?
Apparently it's been very positive.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't cost them so much money anymore.
It was actually Team New Zealand who said, let's end the spy games.
The New Zealand designer, Berlusconi.
Really?
That was his idea. He said, look, let's put all this spy stuff to rest. This is crazy. Let's share all of this information and level the playing field. But yeah, it started here with the designer of the New Zealand boat.
But some habits will be hard to break, so it won't always be plain sailing with full transparency.
I would say somewhere along the line there will be something they're looking for that they're not going to declare.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's going to emerge at some point, somewhere.
What happens if they don't share and if one of the teams, Team New Zealand, goes, no, to hell with it, I don't want that information out? Do they have to give it?
Well, they're supposed to, yeah. I don't know what the recourse would be on that. I have no idea. But I don't think they'd throw them out of the America's Cup, depending on how serious it is.
Canadian football coach Bev Priestman wasn't as lucky, booted from the Olympics and now licking her wounds back home. So can the Games move on from this? Here's Jamie Wall again.
I don't think it's going to cast too much of a massive shadow. A lot worse stuff has happened at Olympics before. If you think about 1972, what happened in Munich, and that didn't stop the Olympics. It didn't stop people winning gold medals. It didn't stop people enjoying people from all over the world coming together and engaging and participating in sport. So I think this is going to be more of a blip than a crisis, and all it's going to take is some world records getting broken, some gold medals, some incredible performances, and we're going to be seeing the Olympics for what it really is, which is something incredibly spectacular.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was engineered by Phil Benj and produced by Davina Zimmer and Alexia Russell. Thanks to Jamie Wall and Larry Keating. I'm Amanda Gillies. Matua.